Good morning, everyone. Okay, we continue our book reading today, Toyota Way to Service Excellence by Jeffrey K. Leica and Karen Ross. Yesterday, we looked at Principle 3, strive for one piece flow without stagnation. We was talking about focus. We also talked about the disadvantage of multitasking. And one of the disadvantages of multitasking is that it's going to slow you down, and it also increases the chances of making a mistake. There's always disruption and there's always interruption. There's always that poor or bad deal from being effective or the ability to concentrate on one thing. So if you want to strive for one piece flow without stagnation in your company or in whatever you're doing, you have to be focused and do away with multitasking. He gave us an example of an academia, that is Karen's husband, who had multiple things to do, and the way he was doing it was just making a whole lot of things difficult for him. So today we'll continue from there, still on value added versus stagnation. Value added versus stagnation, still on principle 3, strive for one piece flow without stagnation. So Karen explains to Brian what he was doing, and together they generated some alternative method for a number. And together they generated some alternative method. After a number of iterations of trying different things or reducing the number of touches and increasing readability of comments to students, here is how the process works now. Students submit paper online on a Blackboard application the school uses. This ensures that they are in a correct and readable format. So Brian doesn't have to check that, nor does he have to email students that he receives their papers. As the students can see online that their papers were posted, he types his comments directly onto the electronic copy of the paper, which is much better for readability. In the syllabus, he has given the students dates the papers will be graded by. So when they are ready, the students can just go into the Blackboard and pull their graded paper. Brian scanned through a sample of papers online to understand some of the variation in approach and then grade the papers one by one, completing one before going on the next. This has significantly reduced the amount of grading time to a manageable amount, and Brian even gets to sleep once in a while. What Dr. Bradbury is suggesting and what Brian began practicing is striving for one piece flow. If you watch an assembly cell in manufacturing, you want to see smooth flow of work from station to station. The product is constantly in motion, going forward, with value-added work being done to it. An interruption in flow is waste. That includes rework because of defect. So automatically, this requires zero defect. It requires equipment to function flawlessly all the time, so that preventive maintenance becomes essential. This image is often likened in Toyota to the smooth flow of water. Stagnant pools are the enemies of flow. I've been with Toyota Sensei while they are walking through a manufacturing plant, pointing and harshly saying, stagnation, stagnation, stagnation. Stagnation is another word for waste. The Japanese word muda, which is also waste, has gotten into the lean lexicon. And unfortunately, sometimes lean is defined as a war on waste, eliminate muda. As we will discuss in later chapters, lean is much more than eliminating waste one by one, but understanding the waste in your system is useful, none less. The Toyota production system identifies 7 deadly waste. We use healthcare examples to illustrate each waste. 1. Overproduction. Duplicate charting, printing of clinical reports in batches to disrupt whether they are needed or not. Inventory. Retain unnecessary forms or obsolete items, overstocking medication in closets, accumulating blood samples waiting for tests. Transportation. Patients walking or being transported from place to place or materials moving around the hospital. Defects. Medication or surgical errors, incorrect charges and billing, or mislabeled blood sample. Overprocessing. Taking down unnecessary information from patients on admission, multiple forms with redundant information requiring lengthy paperwork on release of patients. Waiting. Patients sitting in waiting rooms, waiting for people to phone back and waiting for equipment from supply departments. Motion. Keeping materials and tools in a location far from work, looking for information, moving or searching for patient equipment, medication, or chart. So this is an example of that illustrates waste in a healthcare facility. So all these things that the book has listed out are what you can identify as waste in a medical facility. What customers are actually paying for is value-added work. Value-added work is any concrete thought or action that advances the work towards satisfying customers' need. For a patient that goes into the hospital because of chest pain, the only value added will be when relevant tests are conducted, doctors conduct the exam, the nurses or doctor explains the problem and its treatment, and the treatment is provided. Track a patient from when she arrives at the hospital to when she is back in her car, and it is likely she will spend 3 or more hours on a visit like this. Even if it was a false alarm, while the value-added work probably takes 15 minutes or less. If we were to discuss this with a hospital administrator, he might get agitated and explain that it is impossible to beam the customer from her car to the various places where she has to sign in and get examined. There's legally mandated data the hospital must collect on each patient, or it could be used or shut down. What the administrator is describing is called necessary non-value added work. By adding work to the term non-value added, we recognize that even someone checking a patient's identification for the 100th time is doing work, and that it may be necessary in today's context. But it is still not value added to the patient. It does nothing to address the chest pain. Even necessary non-value added work can be sped up. What if we could take a thumbprint in a fraction of a second and have all the personal data we need called up and verified? We can do it using our smartphone. So why not in a hospital? Okay, so this is your stuff for reading this morning. So it is necessary to do everything possible to avoid wastes. When you avoid waste, you are actually striving for a value-added work to your customers. You're actually striving for a better customer service with your customers. So it is necessary that we avoid anything that will slow down our work, slow down the process of the work, and add value to our customers. Just like what it has taught us in this book this morning. It has given us an illustration of what waste can be. He used a healthcare facility as an example: overproduction, inventory, transportation defect, overprocessing, waiting, and motion. So all these things are illustration of what waste would look like. So in different organizations and different companies, there are if you look very well, there are things that you can identify as waste, things that will actually not make value flow very well, that will stagnate things or make the motion or process of things, stay in one place. So this is just a brief summary of our book reading this morning. Thank you.